don't assume that somebody else will report it because they probably are not going to do that. So,
Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
Right.
we would much rather get practice investigating a known than to miss something really important because somebody assumes, oh, that's probably just a plane or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
definitely.
right. Now we're going to get into whatever you guys want to get into. So please feel free to share and take us where you want to go.
I do.
Okay, so I'll go over some of these, some of the military cases that I've been diving into, and then we'll swap over, and then I'll close it out with a couple of more recent cases. How about that? All right. So let's see. I'd like to start off with let's see. Well, first of all, let me just explain this. I did retired from the U.S. Coast Guard, so I've been my whole career was in the military, interacting with other military branches, and so my heart is really into that realm. So recently we've started to get reports from military members that were on active duty back in the 60s and 70s. So now that puts them in the 70 to 80 year old age range. And they're starting to talk about the things that they were told not to talk about, back in the day. And so I've done a deep dive on some of Florida's really exciting, military related cases. And, a few years ago, December 2017, when Leslie Kean's New York Times article came out and blew the lid off of this thing, it really centered around these three videos: the Tic Tac from the 2004 Nimitz encounter, and then there's the Go Fast and Gimbal. I think those were with the USS Roosevelt off of the east coast of Florida, 2015. But when I'm going back through our database and through MUFON's database, and I'm finding very similar incidents that go back 50 years. So I just wanted to highlight some of those really incredible cases. And the one I'll start with is this is MUFON case number 54309. So this happened on March 31st, 1967. And it involves two U.S. military operators, one with the 644th Radar Squadron, Homestead Air Force Base, and the other at the Army Air Defense Battery in Key West. And they're about 100 miles apart, but their systems were both linked together, so they were seeing the same thing. So that night, March 31st at 10 p.m., Canadian Air Defense started tracking these four targets, radar targets that were heading down the East Coast, all down the eastern seaboard, doing about 5,000 miles per hour, which we don't have anything. I mean, I guess there's hypersonic missiles and stuff that could do that now, but back then, even the fastest aircraft, the SR-71, was nowhere near that fast. So Canada Air Defense was tracking this. They turned it over to NORAD. And in turn, NORAD turned it over to Homestead and to Key West radar because these things were headed to Florida. So the Homestead radar operator, when they got closer to Miami, the Homestead operator started seeing that they had slowed down to about 1,500 miles an hour. They kind of settled in an area offshore, off of Miami. And then for like 4 hours, they were doing like kind of a search pattern or grid pattern where they, and it kind of reminded me of what David Fravor said during the 2004 Nimitz event. He said that this Tic Tac that was down on the surface of the water, he said it was moving so erratically, it was like you put a ping pong ball in a plexiglass box and shook it. And I couldn't help but think that that's kind of what these craft were doing. So NORAD launched these two Marine Corps F-4 Phantom jets out of Boca Chica, and they flew up and started to engage with these things. That people on the ground and all over South Florida saw these and were reporting them. So when these jets would get close to them, they would shoot up and disappear, and then as soon as they would turn around, they would come back down and continue to do their grid pattern. About 2 o'clock in the morning, these things stopped. They were joined by 4 other craft, and then they started heading south. So when they got closer, they passed right over Key West. And as they were approaching Key West, the radar operator there said that his headphones started ringing, like buzzing, like a loud whining noise, and all of the radar shut down. So one of the guys went outside and looked up, because these things are just right on top of him, headed south. And he said that it was like a fireball, like a meteor. He only saw one of them, but it was just traveling laterally. It wasn't coming down. It was just like straight and level as it passed over. And the story really doesn't end there, because a few years after that, it came out. It was just, I guess, classified, at the time that it happened. But there's the story about this Cuban MiG-21 interceptor that disintegrated in flight chasing a UFO. Well, lo and behold, you know what the date on that was? April 1st, 1967. And so that was the same day, because it was a 4-hour event for NORAD, from 10 o'clock on the 31st to 2 a.m. on the 1st. So same day. So I can't help but think the two aren't related. So that's my first one. Really interesting.
Well, let me ask you a question before you move on that. Did you say that last jet it disintegrated? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So what the Cuban pilot reported was that they were in pursuit of a UFO, and the lead aircraft disintegrated, and the trailing fighter jet broke off and returned to base. And during the briefing, that pilot said that they were chasing this UFO, and so I believe the Defense Department had an explanation that it was actually an A-12 or a SR-71 variant that the CIA was using to do surveillance over the island, but those planes don't go 5,000 miles an hour, and they certainly don't have any weaponry that would disintegrate a MiG.
Yeah.
So,
Jeez.
yeah, it's a great story. So
That is, and one of the things I love about the fact that you're bringing up something back then. Sometimes when people are newly looking at UAP, I know you've heard this. I've heard the statements from people like, well, it's probably just, our technology. And I'm like, yeah, but back in the 50s,
yeah,
doesn't fly back then, right? That's a whole different scene. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be a little bit quicker with this one, but
Good.
so this next one is MUFON case number 58305. It happened July 15th, 1975, and the location was 18 miles south of Panama City Beach. So there were these two brothers. One was a retired Army officer. One was an active duty U.S. Coast Guard officer. They were out in their 18-foot fishing boat, fishing. They were 18 miles offshore, just south into the Gulf. And they were fishing about 100 feet away from this U.S. Navy undersea research platform. So if you can imagine, there's a submerged habitat, but then there's like a tower on stilts built right next to it. So the researchers that are spending all the time underwater, they can easily surface, climb up onto the tower. They probably have beds and showers and all the luxuries of dry land up there. So they were fishing near this U.S. Navy research platform. Out of nowhere, these two silver classic saucer-shaped discs pull up, hover right over top of the platform. There was actually one of the Navy divers was climbing down the tower to, I guess, to get into the the submerged portion. And when this happened, he climbed back up, and for about 30 minutes, these two discs moved around in unison. They never got any farther apart. They were glued together. They went about a mile south. They did kind of a grid search again, and then they came back and they hovered back over the platform. At this time, there were a couple of U.S. Air Force F-4s that were coming to intercept them. And as soon as they got close, these two craft made a 45-degree angle departure, and they were gone in like 2 seconds. And then a second after that, these two F-4s came in full afterburners, and did a climb to try to catch them, and but it was gone. So, but it goes back to, the reporting source for this was an active duty U.S. Coast Guard officer. So, yeah.
Amazing. I love the fact that these service people are coming out now. Like they're like, enough already. I'm not going to die with this on my mind. I'm going to share this stuff. That's wonderful.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Next one is case number MUFON case number 64758. This happened on June 6, 1973, and it involved the USS Independence off the East Coast. So this is kind of the same area where the USS Roosevelt was, filmed the gimbal. So keep that in mind when you're listening to this. But this happened about 1 a.m. There was the reporting source was a refueling technician aboard the aircraft carrier on the flight deck. He said 1 o'clock in the morning, the flight deck was just suddenly illuminated like it was daylight, and there was a light in the water that was next to the aircraft carrier. This thing matched the speed of the aircraft carrier that was underway. It accelerated out in the front of the ship, and then it raised out of the water, and they saw that this thing was an actual craft. It stayed there for about 5 minutes, matched the speed of the ship, but just right off the bow, maintaining the position while the ship is going forward. At some point, it did a 360-degree loop around the ship, and then it shot off, never to be seen again. 5 minutes after it happened, the commanding officer came over the intercom and said, "Gentlemen, what you have witnessed did not happen. You are to keep quiet. It did not happen." So,
Of course.
yeah. So now it's coming out now. So this one is this was a case investigated. Actually, there's no investigation on these historical reports because we're just listening and basically documenting this case. But
Yeah.
so this report is case number 112909. It happened May 30th, 1979, and this was the field investigator on this was David Toon. He is he's kind of like our rock star field investigator here in Florida. He was the chief investigator for the longest time. I think he teaches courses over at Embry-Riddle now. So he's still an investigator with us, and this is one of the cases that he looked into. So May 30th, 1979, was the USS Recovery. It was 200 miles southeast of Miami. This is reported by a Navy seaman who was on the lookout signal bridge, which is the platform just above the bridge. It's usually the highest point on the ship, where a person can go and without having to, use climbing gear, kind of thing. So this ship was the USS Recovery. It was trailing a Russian fishing trawler or spy ship, and it was just off the bow. And they noticed that this Russian spy trawler, all of a sudden the lights came on and they were flashing water, lights in the water and up in the air. And then they realized that this object emerged right next to the trawler, shot up to about 1,000 feet or so, illuminated the trawler, and then it came over and then hovered right over top of this Navy ship, the Recovery, before departing straight up, stopping, making instantaneous 90-degree turn, and then shooting off. All of the Navy ship's electrical, the compasses, all of the electronics, the engines, everything died. In fact, they couldn't even repair it. They had to be towed back into port because the ship was completely dead in the water. So
Wow.
yeah,
Well,
and
Matt, some of these that you're describing, like I'm trying to put my mind, like if I was a seaman out there, that sounds terrifying, man.
mm,
I mean, like one, they're playing with you. Two, this massive thing that's hovering around under the water comes up and is illuminating the deck and everything else. I'm thinking to myself, that's like traumatizing if you're out there.
oh, for sure,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. All right, so I have one last one that's kind of two because there's two that are related, kind of like the Cuban MiG with the radar contacts. Um, but I'll try to get through this one pretty quickly. So I investigated this case. This was case number 138123, and it involved a Navy destroyer called the USS WS Sims. And this was July 1st, 1971. And we're going back to the same area, about 200 miles off of Jacksonville, Florida, in the Atlantic Ocean. It was reported by a U.S. Navy radarman who was first class on the frigate. He was on radar watch. At 2 o'clock in the morning, he tracked these three targets on radar in a triangle formation, heading straight for the ship. Now, the radar scope that he was using had about a 50-mile range on it, and he tracked these three lights heading right for the ship until they merged with the ship, where they were right over top of the ship. It took, let's see, he said 60 to 90 seconds. So if you do the math on that, for depending on anywhere from 60 to 90 seconds, that would be anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 miles per hour, and then stopping on a dime. And again, I go back to, at the time, the fastest plane that we had was the SR-71, and it might be able to achieve close to those speeds, but it definitely can't stop on a dime, and it can't hover. So,
And there's no sonic booms or nothing because there's no way any traditional craft could get away with doing that. Yeah.
right, absolutely. So this destroyer, the reason why they were out there was they had just had a new sonar installed on the ship, and they were doing sonar trials with a diesel electric submarine. And so basically, the submarine would dive and then try to hide from them, and then the ship would find them with the new sonar. So the diesel electric submarine, the way that diesel electric works, unlike nuclear powered submarines, is that when they're underwater, they're on batteries, but the batteries lose their energy, so they have to pop up, switch over to the diesel engines to charge the battery. And that's what this sub was doing at the time. It was surfaced, the conning tower was up, and they were about a mile away from the ship. So these lights, they hung out over top of the USS Sims, and then moved over, and then hovered on top of the submarine for about 3 minutes, and then shot off to the north. The story doesn't end there, because when I was doing research for this case, I looked for similar cases around the same time, and lo and behold, I found one. This is NUFORC. For those that aren't familiar with that, that's the National UFO Reporting Center, run by Peter Davenport. There's a NUFORC report on the same day, July 2nd, 1971. Same exact location, but this one involved the USS John F. Kennedy, CVA 67, and they had a 200-foot diameter glowing sphere hover for about 20 minutes right over the top of the flight deck. It shut everything on the ship off. They had two ready alert F-4 Phantoms that were on deck, ready to take off, and it shut those things down. And it's pretty incredible. And finally the thing left, but I wanted to read this. Pardon me. What the skipper had to say. Well, first of all, they went back to Norfolk, Virginia, which was their home port. On their way back, they had a helicopter that landed, and 3 or 4 men in trench coats boarded the ship. We can all kind of surmise what happened. And then right before they pulled into port, the skipper got on to the 1MC the closed circuit TV and told the crew. And I'll read this. This is a quote. I would like to remind the crew that certain events that take place aboard a naval combat ship are classified and are not to be discussed with anyone without a need to know. And, but thankfully, this gentleman, his name is Jim Kampf, he made this report to National UFO Reporting Center, and we were able to correlate these two events that, they're quite possibly related.
Yeah. Hi, we need your help to get bigger and better. How? Just like, comment, and subscribe. It's free and it just takes a few seconds. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.